Welcome back, guys. So today this is what we're going to do. Let me restart the sketch. Yeah, so it's basically the tower game on the phone, right? So every time I click, it will freeze the bar at that position and cut it off from the edges of the last bar I clicked, right? If I'm completely off the bar right now, it should lose the game. Right now, it's just not doing anything, right? Just like if you didn't click there, right? So this is what we'll be building today. So yeah, let's get into it. Let me show you on the whiteboard the concepts for it. Okay, there. All right. So tower, right? So we will have our canvas. We will start with one block at the bottom, right? So we'll have a concept of block, right? So we'll have class, block, and maybe this class only has, right, not much in it. Maybe um, it can just have like x, y, um, so it's position and maybe a width and a height. The height for the moment, it's not important, though it will be part of it, but the most important part are the x and the w, right? So I'm thinking of putting all of those float just because we could possibly do ins, but float is fine, right? So same thing for all of them. What else does it need? Well, the block, that's pretty much it. We might want to have a show function inside of it, right? So show function inside of it just to draw it. What else could I have? For the moment, that's all I'm thinking about. So let's start with that. And we'll have also the class tower. This will be basically the main, like the main game object, right? So what we'll have in here? We'll need a list of blocks for sure. So call it blocks. I'm going to do an array list just because we're not going to know how many blocks we're going to stack to begin with. So let's do array list, array list of blocks. What else? So we do have, so the tower is composed of blocks, right? So this, right? This, this. Well, they are not straight, but anyway, right? And we always have one moving block that goes from edges to edges, right? So that block is not yet part of the tower, right? It's not yet part of the blocks array. That's what I'm thinking, right? It could be a separate object, a separate block in here called maybe current or the moving object, right? The moving block. So we could just call it, I don't know, let's call it current. Maybe not the best name, but that's fine. It's going to be a block. Okay, so I'm thinking about it. Since it's going to be a block, it will need an update function, right? It will need to have some velocity on the x-axis, right? So let's maybe have an update method over here. It's just going to change, well, if we're going to update the position based on some velocity, we'll need that velocity over here, right? I'm going to call it Vx. It's also going to be a float. So we could say maybe x plus equals Vx, and also make the check before this, so this is going to be after, but we're going to have like if bounce or if touching edge, then it's going to bounce, right? We could either this be a function, or it's just basically setting Vx to be equal to times equal to -1, right? We just want to invert the velocity, right? So it's 1, boom, it touched the edge, now it's -1, and so on and so forth, right? So we'll have an update function, and that's only going to be used for the current block. Okay, so I'm thinking in the constructor of tower, all we'll do is create this block, which is going to be the base block, the initial block, and then we're going to create the first moving block, and then whenever we're going to act upon it, it's going to be a new current block. So I'm thinking we'll need some function to call whenever we click the mouse or press the spacebar, right? Whenever the action is being done. So we could call it maybe action. So action is going to be the function that gets called whenever let's say I click the mouse to see if the block is there, right? So what does action need to do? It just needs to cut off any edges that are not on top of the latest block in the list of blocks, right? In this case, this one, and then it needs to move that block into the list of blocks, and then it also needs to create a new current block. Okay, so we'll need some kind of function to create a new one, right? Let's call it next. Next will give us maybe not the best name, but next should create a new current block. Okay, so act. So okay, right? So let's say we need to cut this block to fit this one. So how would we go about it? Let me just erase. Going to put this here. We'll do the implementation in processing, so it's fine. Okay, right? Okay. So let's say they are not blocked, they're just lines, right? To keep it simple, right? So let's say this is our current block. So the one that is moving, let's make it a bit smaller maybe. Okay. And this is the one, the latest block in the list of blocks, right? So technically we should in this case, the only section that should get cut is this one, right? In this case, this point here is the X of the block. And same goes for this one, it's the X of the latest block in the block list. This whole thing here is the width, the W, right? So we need to calculate this specific value and then subtract, and then we need to move the X to be here, right? So let me redraw it, right? So this point over here needs to be moved over here. So we need to move the X to this point. So that's easy. That's basically saying that the X of current is now equal to the last dot X, right? So we're basically saying that this X is the new X for the one on top. But if we only do that, it's going to cause an issue, right? Because the W didn't change. So it's basically going to take this part, put it here. It's not exactly that, but right, the width will stay the same as it was before. So we also need to know this specific length to be able to remove it from the width. So to do that, we can do this X minus this X, right? So let's say here, let's say the canvas is like this, okay? So maybe it's at, this one's at 200 and maybe 220, right? So this x, so I'll call this x1 and this one x2, right? So we basically would need to say, so x2 we know is at, let's say 220 we said, or I don't remember, but let's say 220, and x1 is maybe 200, right? So to get this specific length, we can just subtract x2 x1 from x2, right? So the space is going to be x2 minus x1. Okay, and then we can just do the w minus this is the new w, right? So that's for the left side. It's basically going to be the same. Let's say now, let me take a different color. Something that's visible, maybe? Sure, that should be, yeah, that's kind of visible, that's fine. Okay, so let's say now it's on the other side that needs to be cut off, right? So in the case that, let's say this is our current, and this is the last one in the list of blocks, right? So we would need to cut off this section over here. It's basically the same principle, though this time we're not only going to use the x's, we're also going to use the width to modify the size, right? So we know this point over here. Let's call it x1, right? Again, and yeah, so let's think of it as x1 and x2, right? And x1 is basically equal to x plus the w. And the same goes for this one. So x plus w, right? Let's say now we need this length over here, right? This length. So this, let's call it, let's call it z, for example, right? So yeah, it's a bit small, but it should be visible. Okay, so z is going to be equal to this length, this x minus this one. So x1 minus x2, right? And then what we need to do, we don't need to update the actual x, we just need to update the w, right? So we need to say w is equal to w minus z, right? And that's the new width for this one, which will be removed, and so the new width will give us something like this, right? So that's the principle. So we apply this one only if x1 is smaller than x2, and this one we apply only if this x plus w is greater than this x plus w. All right, and it's possible that both, well, in our case it won't be possible, but let's say it's possible that both are, right, that, let's say that this is possible. We'll do the check for both all the time. In our case it won't be, because the new current should be exactly the same length as this one. All right, yeah, so we cut it, we cut the current, and then we add it to the list of blocks, and then we call next. It creates a new current, and then we're pretty much good to go. All right, so let's do this. All right, let me stop this. Let me remove all that we have. Delete, maybe, yeah, there we go. And delete. Awesome. Okay, so let's start with void setup, like always, and void draw. Okay, and we'll have also, I'll do the mouse press, you can do the key press like on spacebar or something like this, right? Void mouse pressed. Okay, awesome. Now let's start with the block class, right? It should be pretty straightforward. I cannot call it block because I believe something else already is called block. So we'll do tower block. Okay, what do we want in here? We said a float for x, a float for y, a float for w, and a float for the height. Awesome. We also said we needed the x velocity, right? So a float for velocity x, let's call it vx. We can set it equals to 1 to begin with, right, by default. Okay, so we'll need a constructor for that. Constructor is going to receive all of the actual properties. So maybe not, well, yeah, it's going to receive all of it. That's fine. So float x, float y, float w, and float height, right? And this dot x equals x, this dot y equals y. This dot width equals width, and this dot height equals height. There you go. All right. So we also said we needed an update function for this one, which is basically just going to apply the velocity to the x, right? So I think I'm going to skip this dot because we're going to have a lot of properties eventually. I mean, I'm going to. Okay, all right. So that's the base. We're also gonna have to like show it eventually, but that's fine for now. We can worry about it later on. Okay, we'll need the class for the tower. Okay, so we said we needed a list of blocks, right? Let's call it blocks. Let's by default create a new empty array list. So no blocks by default. And we said our current is also going to be in here. Call it current. Sure, that's not going to be defined by default. Okay, so the constructor for this one. I don't think it'll receive anything for right now. We can always pass it arguments if we so wish to desire, wish to do this. Okay, so let's create, like we said, the bottom, the base of the tower. So the first initial block in the blocks. So I'm thinking, so let's set also like a width or sorry, a thickness to blocks, right? So maybe float block h, right, for the height of each block. So let's do maybe 30 for right now. Okay, all right. So the base block, it's going to be a tower block. Let's call it base. Or foundation, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be a new tower block, which is going to start its x from 0, which is the edge of the canvas, and then the y we want it at the bottom, right? So since we want it at the bottom, it's going to be the height, the full length, minus its height for the block, right? So the height of the canvas minus the block height. Okay, that's for the y. Now w, it's just going to be the width of the actual canvas, and h, it's going to be the block h, right? Okay, yeah, okay, that's pretty much it. Now let's add it to our blocks. Okay, good. And we need to create the current, right? New. Okay. Let's create it. Well, we know the we know that we always want to base. So the x value, I think I'm just going to do it randomly. But the sorry, let me mute this. Okay, all right, okay. But I'm thinking that the x is going to be randomly created, and the y is going to be the last base block y, basically, right? So the x, let's do random between 0 and let's do also float initial block width, right? Let's do 400 for right now, it's fine. So from 0 to the width minus the initial size for the first, well, aside from the base, the first block. All right, so that's the x. The y, it's going to be the last the last block in the tower block. So it's going to be base dot y, but we need to remove the height, right? The block height. There we go. Okay, and then we need its width, which will be, in this case, whenever we're creating the first current block, going to be the initial value for the width, and then it's going to be the height is just going to be the block height, right? Awesome. I think we're done with the constructor right now. So we said we needed some kind of action method. Right. Okay. So we need to know if the block, the current block is currently on top of a block, right? If it's not on top at all, then we're just going to skip the action, right? Let me explain. So let's say okay, this is my new canvas. So let's say, and this is the line over here, right? The first base block. So let's say I have this as a start for my tower. And now this is my current block that is moving, right, horizontally. If I click right now and I call action, it shouldn't, well, it should, like, I mean, the game should stop, should have the end screen and whatever, but right now I'm just going to say, like, you cannot lose. So it's just not going to do anything when you click and the block is just outside of the range of that block, right? So what I can check is just to see if x plus w is smaller, is smaller or equal to this x, right? So if this point here is smaller than this point over here, or in the case that this point here, which is just x, is greater or equal, let's say again, to x plus w, right? Not a beautiful w, but yeah, that's the whole idea. Let me get back. All right. So if, oh, and I'll create a function right now, but I'll need to get the last tower block like a lot of times from the blocks. So I'll just create a function called last. It's just going to return the last block in the blocks list. So we're going to get the element at index blocks dot size minus one. Minus one. There. Okay. So last is good. Okay. So we need to check if the current plus, and I might want to do something like here, maybe float function that returns maybe let's call it x2 maybe. which is just going to return width plus W. Yeah, let's do that. So return X plus W. Okay, and we'll do well, I don't really often need Y2, but yeah, let's just do X2 just because I'm going to use it a lot. Sure. Okay. So yeah. Well, for right now, let's not. It's going to be maybe better to have the code, like all of the code at one place and then update it if we need it, like refactor it later on. So we know current.x plus current.w is the rightmost x position of the current block. And if that position is less than or equal to the last block X, which is the leftmost part of the last block in our tower, then it's no good. We shouldn't do anything. And on the other case, if the X of the current is greater than or equal to the last block X plus W, right? The rightmost point of that block. Okay, then we also want to just return early. Awesome. Okay. So now we need to do the two checks to cut the block based on the last one, right? So let's do that. So if like I said, okay. So if the current.x is smaller than the last dot x, that means, let me take it back, that means this case, right? Whoa. Okay, there you go, right? So we have x1 being the current x, and this one is last x, right? So it's smaller. So what we'll need to do, like we said, we need to get the difference, right? Let's call it diff maybe. Diff equal the last dot x minus the current dot x, right? That's good. Okay, and then I need to set the current dot x equal to the last dot x, and also set the current dot w to be equal to current dot w minus the difference, right? Okay, there you go. That's it. Now let's do, so we're done with the left side, we cut it properly. Now let's do the right side. So if the current dot x plus the current dot w, so the rightmost section, is greater than the last dot x plus the last dot w, then we do pretty much the same thing, though one difference is that we don't change the x of the current. We only change the width to be the difference between the current. We need to subtract from the current. So current dot x, well, basically this exact thing. Okay, we need to subtract this over here, right? I believe that seems to make sense in my mind. Okay, there we go. That's pretty much it. Now, okay, we've cut the block. Now we need to put the current in the list of blocks, right? Okay, we're good. And then we need to create the new current or the next current. Okay. We're pretty much there, I think. So let's do our next. Maybe it returns. Well, no. Let's do void next, which will assign the current. So it'll say like current equals new tower block, so on and so forth, right? So let's write it. So what should be the x, right? The x, like we said, I think we can just keep it as random, right? So between 0 and this time it won't be it will be with minus, but not this. It'll be with minus its possible, its maximum w, which will be the last w, the one we just added into block, the previous current, basically. The one that gets replaced by this one. So it'll be, let me think. Sorry. It'll be last. Do I have? Yeah. Okay. Dot w. Okay. Awesome. Now the y should be pretty much this, but using the last again, and the w should be last dot w, right? And the height should just be the same as all of the blocks, right? So block H. That should create us a new current properly, I believe. We'll see. Since we're only using it here, we might not even want the function. You might want it, you might not want it. I'm going to remove it and add it back if I need it. I think that's it. Maybe, oh yeah, no, sorry, over here. We need to make sure for the edges, right? So if x is smaller than 0, I'll do smaller or equal to 0. I don't think it changed that much, but I'll do that. So if x is smaller or equal to 0, or if the x plus w is greater than or equal to the width, then we need to set vx equals to vx times -1, right? To make it go the other direction. What's the issue here? Invalid character. Let me copy this, paste this somewhere else, copy it back, paste it back. Yeah, sometimes it's just space that gets messed up. I don't know. Some invalid character. Anyway, okay, that's, I believe, it. Let's see if we get any errors. I know we're not going to see anything, but let's just see if we get any errors, right? So let's do size maybe like 900 by 900. Let's do background 0 or darkish, and let's create our tower as well, right? Sure. Right, so we'll have tower, and let's create it here. Okay. Okay, let's just see if this runs. It does. It's good. Okay, now we need to call this update function, but I would like to not go through the array from here, really from within the tower, right? So maybe tower will also have an update function, right? An update method, right? So we could just do for each tower block, call it block in the blocks, call block.update, right? Well, no, sorry, my bad. It's not all of the blocks we want to update, just the current. Yeah. Okay. So we'll update once every time in draw. So tower.update. Okay. And okay, let's see if that still gives us no issues. Let's give it a second just to make sure if it needs to bounce or anything like that. Okay, doesn't seem to have any issues. Let's make it visible now, right? So maybe void show. Let's do rect. It's going to be pretty straightforward. X, Y, W, height. Okay. Yeah, and let's do void show in here as well. Now we'll need that for loop, right? Because we'll need to show all of the blocks, right? So for each tower blocks, call it block in the blocks list. We'll call block.show. And we need to also call it for the current, right? Okay, and now we can just call show in here. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's make sure it bounces. Nice, it does. That's cool. We might want to redraw the background. That could be a good idea. Okay, let's copy this, paste it here. See it now? Okay. Now when we click, it doesn't stop, it doesn't do anything, right? So let's, in here, in the mouse press, let's do tower.action. If I can type. There we go. Okay, let me wait. Okay. Okay. Let's do it now. Okay, it did cut properly. Let's do it here. It did also seem to cut properly. It's good. Cool. And if I click outside, it doesn't do anything, which we want it for right now. Eventually, you'll want to like show up in the end screen and whatnot. But yeah, I think we're pretty much done with the concept. You can add like a counter, how many blocks you've done. Also, right now, let me make this really big, maybe like 800, just to show you one issue that this will have is at some point, right, it's going to like go off, right? It's not going to be contained in the canvas. What you could do is basically just make sure, translate the whole, maybe do something like over here, right? You could do like, well, over here, right? You could do something like if current dot, well, tower dot current dot y is smaller than the height divided by 2, right? Then maybe do translate y. I don't know if that's a function. It doesn't seem. Translate 0 for the, we don't need to translate that, but we want maybe this, right? I don't know, let's see it. I think we're going to be close to this. Okay, I mean, you could do instead maybe, so you want to bring it down, so you need to add, so you might want to do something like tower, maybe, I don't know. Let me first do something. Set the base as at the middle of the canvas, right? Just to start with, and and then this will only be applying for the first one, but let me comment this out just to make sure if it's okay, right? Okay, so what you could do then is just translate by tower.blocks.size no tower.last.y maybe. Yeah, no, it's going to be the other way around. Well, no, it's fine. It's just like this. Right. Yes. Well, I mean, yes and no. We can put this back to be from 0, I think. Or to the full height. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Okay, yeah, we're good. So let's do this. And then the actual height can just be this. It's fine. Okay, I think we're good now. We are definitely not. Okay. Well, I don't know anymore. Try it out. Share it with me whenever you have it figured out. You could do colors, right? You could set the colors in the show function, whatever you want, really. So hope you enjoyed this sketch, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.